Hello again, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting edition of the podcast known as Two Men in Black and White. An honest conversation. It's a Sunday. And you know what? We got a little bit of breaking news, or alleged breaking news, shall I say. I'm joined by my partner in crime, Brock Ganeles. Mark Hayes here in ATL, Brock Ganeles up north in the beautiful Hudson Valley. And Brock, I just got a little notification here on my tablet that says the Trump administration will now go ahead and facilitate the return of the man mistakenly deported to El Salvador. So now this is a YouTube clip coming from Don Lemon. Let's see if it actually happens. I mean, what is the problem with getting this guy back? This is a 4 or 5 hour flight. This guy could have been home 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago when they noticed it. Why is this guy not back yet? And why are they defending their error? This is a man without a criminal record. This is a family man. This is the man who has people that love him. This is a man who has contributed to our society. And yet, we're still talking about, and again, Bernie and AOC had a great rally yesterday. Thousands upon thousands of people showed up, the biggest crowd yet, from what I read. But we're still not talking about the basic issue, the underlying poison, right? The pus below the surface, which is the racism and the MAGA movement. So I just know if it were a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white woman that looked like Gabby Petito, man, we'd be moving hell and earth to get her back. If the person mistakenly removed from this country looked like a white female. You know, in the media, we used to call it the missing white woman syndrome, right? Because a white woman would go missing and all of a sudden, national attention, right? Very rarely does that kind of attention occur for people of color. For Native American women, they have been screaming bloody murder about all the Native American women that have gone missing with zero news coverage. So let's start there. Why can't we just get this guy home? And how do they, with a straight face, try to defend this mistake?
Well, what hit me is, as you just hit the breaking news, because this just must have happened in the last 5-10 minutes that this announcement was made, is that why did the administration buckle? Why did they back down after spending a couple of weeks of just saying, hey, you know, he's in a sovereign nation. We don't have any jurisdiction over what happens now, right? They tried to play that game, you know, that it's out of their hands, that they can't control it. I mean, this is clearly, you know, had gone right up to the line of constitutional crisis because, you know, the courts have said, bring him back in no uncertain terms. Now, they delayed. They didn't show up at a bunch of the hearings, and then they pretended like there's nothing they could do about it. So it's interesting that they took the back pedal today because one thing Trump knows is the media. And I think that the reason why they haven't wanted to bring, I forgot the guy's name, Gabriella back, is I think they know this is going to be a made-for-TV moment going against them. And now there's going to be coverage of the plane landing. There's going to be the 60 Minutes interview that comes in a few weeks where he talks about the conditions down there. There's going to be all the sympathizing, right? So it's a news cycle that's coming like a freight train at Trump where it just makes them look both racist and incompetent.
Yep. And
basically heartless.
Right.
Because, you know, Trump's pissed that they even admitted a mistake, right? Because that was the problem. If they never admitted a mistake, then they could have fought it a different way, but they admitted the mistake, and now then they said they couldn't turn it back around. So I'm a little curious at the reason why. I know why they deported him, right? Because right now we have a Gestapo running around, you know, basically rounding up brown people and either throwing them there or now the Eric Prince, you know, the Dark Prince is talking about all these for-profit prisons that he's going to run in different countries and here and make a ton of money. You know, that guy's a fucking self-proclaimed mercenary. So the whole lot of this, interestingly, is going to lose Trump a cycle. But I think the answer to my question is they were afraid of stepping over that constitutional crisis line, maybe because the rallies are getting so big that they see an engaged America and didn't want gasoline to throw on the fire. I mean, I just think of everything is basically a Trump self-preservation or ego, malignant narcissist decision. So there's something in there where Trump just decided, I got to back away from this because I don't want to fight this battle on a constitutional basis right now. He might down the road, but he didn't want to today.
Well, let me ask you this, because since we're talking about running up to the line when you talk about constitutional crisis, let me ask you this. What's to stop you or I from getting grabbed by a bunch of guys in black garb and masks and thrown into a van and shipped off to some country like El Salvador?
Nothing.
Where's due process?
Only bad press. Bad press, something that maybe turns the American people against Trump on the sentiment is the only thing that stops it. There's certainly nothing legally. DOJ's not going to stop it, right? The authority of the government, the authorities aren't going to stop doing it until it hurts them to do it. So this guy in El Salvador was hurting the cause. So I guess they're going to rip the Band-Aid and bring him back, take the pain of the short-term media cycle, and then go back to quietly just rounding people up and deporting them. I think that's what their thinking is. Let's get this out of the headlines. Let's just get it over with. And Trump's probably like, I'll figure something out to overwhelm this. You know, we'll go to war with Iran. We'll go to, so that no one talks about this anymore.
Bomb somebody. Yeah, absolutely. Wag the dog mentality.
But who knows? Maybe he did this today to get out of the headlines the fact that he backpedaled on the tariffs by excluding iPhones from the tariffs, right? Because we can crash the entire economy, but you can't tell the American people, you can't let the price of iPhones go up because then people are going to get really mad.
Right. I mean, it's comical, and I shouldn't be laughing because we're all suffering because of it. But getting back to Abrego Garcia, you know, the due process in our Constitution guarantees us, you know, the legal process before we are basically convicted, and that's what happened to Garcia. He was tried and convicted while he was in the back of that van. Well, prior to them picking him up and throwing him in the van, he was tried and convicted.
The question is, does the opposition stay on it and start talking about the next person, right? Let's talk about that hairdresser.
Right.
That got thrown in there. Or the soccer player, the guy who had the tattoo, autism tattoo, right? Like, a lot of people that just got sent down there that had done nothing wrong. So we'll see. I think the Trump admin thinks if they can just put this one situation to bed, they can get rid of the rest. And I think it's incumbent on the opposition is to keep making noise on the other atrocities and really discredit this entire program. Because really you're discrediting a core tenet of the Trump, MAGA white supremacy Project 2025 movement, which is that you need to deport a ton of people.
Them, right, the others.
Yeah,
you need to get rid of the others.
Yeah.
You know, and so that brings us to AOC and Bernie. Saw some clips, saw the crowd. I was, really, really uplifted by the crowd because I'm glad it continues. It's not just on the scheduled day. I'm glad Bernie and AOC are out there doing their thing. But as a woman of color, I want her to remind America, right, that even when Trump goes away, we will still have this scourge of racism and the unfairness that this country has embraced for so long, right? And that's why I was asking for things that were within reach. Remember when you asked me, what's it going to take for black folks to be
what's the message? Yeah.
We need a starting line, right? Because we can't solve it in an election cycle, right? Like we can't get rid of systemic racism in an election cycle, right? But we can get access to education, right? Because we can build back up the Department of Education, put all the funding back in place, and then let's take a good hard look of why inner city, urban schools, rural schools are so underfunded, right? And so lacking the tools that you need to survive in a 21st century economy. You know, even if you're working on a farm, you need to know how to work a computer. You need to know how to do your books. You need to know how to be a part of a digital economy that's gone global, even if you're farming. So yeah, you got to do the hard work on the farm, but the digital side, your marketing, your billing, your payment collection, you still need to be a part of all that, right? When you're in the digital economy. And so, you know, we've got to understand how big a part race plays in an unfair America. And a lot of people are unwilling to face that.
Bernie's right in his lane, and it's a fight the oligarchs tour, right? And of
Right.
course, in L.A., you know, was probably a pretty mixed crowd. I mean, it was hard to tell from the video I saw. You know, then they're going to Utah, then they're going to Idaho, so they're really seeking out white audiences in a lot of places, and that's fine. You know, and I know the simplicity of the fight, the oligarchs' messaging is working, so let them hammer that home. But I just feel like what needs to accompany that discussion, it's really fighting the white oligarchs, right? And it's not just that they're trying to take all the money. It's not just a greed play. It's a Project 2025 trying to change American society to make it more of, as a white nationalism, white Christian nationalism nation. So there's more to it than just the economics. I get it, that's their headline. I get it, that's the message that's resonating. I get it, they're trying to peel off white MAGA voters or those middle of the road independents or even complacent, you know, some complacent Democrats with the economic message, because money like motivates people. Everyone wants to be richer. It really plays into the selfishness of America and how capitalism has worked against even a lot of white people. But I don't think it's so incongruous to talk about the race message along with the economic message. You have Latinos being thrown in the back of vans, right? The story we just talked about in El Salvador prisons is going on at the same time that this economic destruction is happening. And they're not mutually exclusive. They're all part of one package that needs to be fought. And I just feel it all should be talked about together, and all audiences should be addressed. So I don't want to criticize the people who are doing a great job. Bernie, you know what? AOC are getting great crowds, and Bernie even went to Coachella, and they booed Trump at Coachella, right? So he's even going. Bernie's in his 80s, and he's fucking hustling his ass off. So I don't want to be critical of Bernie, but I just want other people to join and bring more to the message. Yes, I think AOC should do it, but others should be doing it.
By the way, that was a brilliant stop by Bernie too, getting to Coachella. I was really impressed with that move. But just to emphasize your point, we saw RFK on television admitting that he didn't know about all the cuts that were taking place, and he says, I thought those were all DEI cuts. Again, DEI is, you know, just a homonym for, you know, the black and brown people.
A catch-all phrase for like anyone who's not a white guy like me, right? Oh shit! I thought it was
just get rid
of the other people. Oh, we got rid of some of my people.
I didn't know that. Right. The people that were working on the norovirus project that has been breaking out on cruise ships, all of them are gone, fired, done. Right? The person that saved Donald Trump's life, fired, done. Right? The people that are in charge of making sure the vaccine efficacy, they're all done. Right? All this stuff is happening, right? And who's that stuff impacting? It's impacting all of us. We've got a measles outbreak in West Texas, but you know what? West Texas is pretty heavily Latino populated, maybe not such a big deal. Then they show a doctor, a white male doctor, who's asking people to come into his clinic while he's suffering from the measles. He's got lesions on his face. Like, it is just insane. This is all of us. My point is, it's all of us, right? Blacks, browns, others, but white America too. This is about you too. This is about poor white America as well, because it's about class. We should all be under the same umbrella fighting this white supremacy movement.
Yeah, it's about class and race. And of course they're very much intertwined, because, you know, we've kind of made it so people who aren't the quote correct race are, you know, lower class for the most part. right? So they're intertwined. That's why the messaging has to be intertwined. You know, I'm out on Blue Sky a lot. I'm kind of putting this message in print that we verbalize here on the call, right? And I had someone shoot back at me saying like, "Hey, don't anyone could attend the Bernie and AOC rallies. Like, it's not about race. Don't be divisive." And I'm like, to want to discuss and broaden the message beyond economics and class and to incorporate race and acknowledge that that's a big piece of this puzzle. And in order to have a fighting force that can get to the end game of, beating back MAGA, impeaching Donald Trump and overwhelming MAGA, it's going to take white people and people of color. And I'm like, what's divisive about wanting to add to the message and talk about race? Like, what was that response? Why is it immediately divisive
Right.
to say we need to include race in the messaging? I don't see where that's divisive. Who's that?
Me neither.
Who's that insulting? Who's that upsetting? Like, why would that upset someone? Isn't that just
Right.
an obvious piece of the puzzle? Of course it's an obvious piece of the puzzle. It's an obvious piece of the puzzle for Project 2025 and the other side. It's
Right.
obvious to them. They know what they're doing. They're trying to bring this, Christian white nationalism to overwhelm America and have that be how society operates.
Right.
Why,
Period.
on the opposition, would we not be talking about it?
Right. But then again, Brock, this gets me back to our former teammates that you watch the basketball game with. We've been talking about this. You're comfortable. Okay, we don't want we're comfortable there. We're okay with that part of the argument, right? Don't bring that up. Come on. Everything's not about race, but it is. But it is. And you can't you like you said, we can't have this discussion honestly and get black people involved if you're not going to acknowledge it. Ever since Trump came down the escalator in Trump Tower, right? His whole program has been identified with the racist bone in every American's body that he can touch, right? And if we hate the same people, we're on the same page. I feel like that's how we won the first time. That and the combination of what Fox News has done to Hillary Clinton is how he won the first time, and I know it's how he won this time. This time it wasn't any sugarcoating it. It was about we got to get rid of that. I mean, look who you had buying the election for you. The apartheid rooted South African, right? Like, what else does that tell us? That we don't need to be here, that we're not a part of this society. Black history is part of American history, right? And then when you don't acknowledge it, it's a further insult to our contributions of this country as a whole. Just like I mentioned some of the inventions that black people have made and then perfected and for the better of America as a whole. Right? Garrett Morgan didn't invent the stoplight for only black America to use. Right? We use it everywhere. So let's get under this tent as one and let's have the conversation together. Tell me what you don't understand about my culture. I'm happy to explain it to you. Right? Let's start understanding each other's culture. We understand a little bit more about white America than they understand about us because it's in all our schoolwork, in all our school books, in all our history books, and all our social studies. And so we need well-meaning, well-intentioned white America to take an interest in all of America, not just themselves and their car notes and their house notes and their beach houses and their boats, right? I don't know, but I know one black man with a boat. And I hear white folks talking about boats all the time, right? And so, I've had people invite me up to their boat on Lake Lanier, right? My white friends. It's like, yeah, man, I can't, man, shoot, I'll never be able to afford a boat. Like, how much does that cost?
It's like a second house.
Yes. So, we need to be under this tent together because let me tell you, just like you saw under George Floyd protests, we are willing to march arm in arm with everyone who supports and acknowledges us. right? Because you saw so many white folks out there. Where did that sentiment go? Right? Like, I want to know where that sentiment went.
Well, look, white men on the left are going to be the last ones to come around because white men have had a lot of success, and the kind of the culture of white men on the left isn't that different than the culture of white men on the right, except that white men on the right are pretty more open about the fact that they're racist, and like they don't mind saying it.
Hmm.
They're more open about the perks that society gives them and more overt about the language they're willing to use about, quote, the others. White men on the left, they aren't certainly comfortable. They don't think they're racist, right? They'll deny race, that they're racist. So therefore, they'll downplay racism in general and then like kind of discount the experience and therefore not be apt to want to talk about it. And that's kind of what's going on in the left right now. There's so little talk about race because it's just easier to talk about economics and wealth because that's sort of money's green and everybody's money's green, and it sort of brings everybody together, and it doesn't make anyone have to question their success or their lot in life, and no one ever wants to admit that they had some sort of advantages and that's how they got there, right?
Right.
Ego takes over and everyone wants to just think that they were from the bootstraps and made it happen. Even though as a white person, to me, it's kind of obvious if I'm in a society with more white people, and let's just go on the premise that everyone's more comfortable with people that look like them. Okay, well, I'm in a society with more people that look like me. I'm just going to be more apt to be able to win over more customers, right? Because I'm
Right.
already starting from a place of comfort with more of the customer base. So just from
Right.
that alone, even if no one was racist, just from that alone, just if you just say that human beings are tribal, or there's just
Right.
a little slight extra comfortability with people who look like you, well then therefore you're just getting that slight advantage all the time. But I guess I'm not some great civil rights activist, right? I doubt I would have been out there with Dr. King in the 60s. I just think that this is just logical stuff, and I just don't feel like it's some like huge negative on anything I accomplished in life to acknowledge that I'm a white person in a white society, and there were probably, there were definitely some advantages I got because of that. But when we shut down this computer for the day, I'm not like broken because I said that, and I don't think it's
Right.
like pierced, my heart that I like it had some advantages. Like I don't get it.
And I think most white people, Brock, would be surprised that black folks don't begrudge you for that. Right? Nobody begrudges the fact that you've had a great career. I say this 1,000 times, right? Because Brock is winning doesn't mean I can't win too. And if I'm winning, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't. Right? Like, I think there's enough money to go around. I think there are enough opportunities to go around. Because when I look at, my highly educated friends, contemporaries, fraternity brothers, we are all voicing the same frustration in a ton of different industries. Whether it's I know doctors, PhD doctors that are saying, geez, I can't get tenure. I can't get on here. I can't get on with this
Yeah.
company. Can't get on. And they're
Yes.
wondering why, right? In every industry. Medicine. I was quoted a figure right now that there are like 700, between 7 and 800 black males in medical school right now. Howard University, my esteemed alma mater, one of the best educations, period. One of U.S. News and World Report's top 100 universities, right? There are same amount of African American men as there are others attending the university right now. 2025, others and black men are on equal footing in enrollment at a prestigious HBCU. Why? Right? And it gets back to the system that's holding us back. And we have to fix look, and the really profitable and successful companies understand that diversity of thought, diversity of talent, diversity of opinion really helps make them very successful. It's part of the formula.
And part of why the Bernie message has to talk about race is that okay, let's say we're talking about class. Well,
Hmm?
Like, okay, if we're just going to talk about economics, is anyone in that crowd going to get mad about the fact that Latinos are being thrown in the back of vans and imprisoned? Well, okay, well, who are these Latinos that, well, they're not on unemployment. They're not here getting benefits. They're
Right.
here fucking working, right? They came here to make some dollars that they couldn't make in their home country, maybe for safety as well. But they're all here are working, and they're a part of that, in essence, for the most part, lower class
Right.
that's getting low wage workers doing the hard jobs. So they could be in that crowd with Bernie talking about the oligarchs and class warfare and the like, because they're definitely there in the class kind of way. But if you don't combine the message, that 35,000 people that are out there in LA listening to Bernie and AOC speak, they're not going to make that connection that there's also a whole bunch of people, in the lower class economically that are also getting treated horrendously. They're not
Right.
just getting screwed economically, they're getting treated horrendously. Just the issues are intertwined, and they got to be talked about together. And for the white people that are getting screwed economically because the oligarchs are trying to take so much, like I'll say, like the oligarchs and Trump, like they treat everyone the way America's treated black people, right? Like,
Yep.
yeah. So yeah, now you know what black people have been enduring and how it's been swimming upstream against the tide their entire lives. So like, let's acknowledge that as we fight these battles, because we'll have more people fighting.
And speaking of another battle, as we speak right now, the state of New Mexico has called in the National Guard to fight crime. To fight crime. You need the National Guard to fight crime. Why don't you just put more officers on patrol or hire more officers? We're going to incur the expense of the National Guard in Albuquerque. Albuquerque is not one of those places that I think, now I know they have their issues there, but when I think of high crime throughout New York City, Albuquerque is not a place where I feel like you need, military vehicles and assault weapons rolling through the beautiful, New Mexico City like Albuquerque.
I'm going to New Mexico in 3 weeks, so I'm going to tell you about it. By the way,
Please let me know.
we're
Please.
driving because we still won't get on a plane because planes are still falling out of the sky left and right. And
Lord.
now, by the way, like just to go back to another comment, is like I don't know who the fuck's getting on a cruise line right now. Those things are already cesspool of germs, and now there's no doctors and no one investigating it. Like get on one of those things at your own risk. And I hope that a neurovirus doesn't come flying through. But
Exactly.
But back to the message at hand. So I just want the message to be combined. Also, and this doesn't have to come from Bernie and AOC. I'm seeing more of it online, but all the protests and everything that goes on in the opposition from here on out has to have an end goal, and that end goal is the removal of Donald Trump.
Boom.
I think it can happen through impeachment, and that just means convincing enough Republicans that they cannot go 4 years with this lunatic in office. That it's hurting the country, it's hurting them. Maybe they also have to be convinced it's hurting their party because they're so selfish. Because I don't think they would do something for country over party, or they just have to be afraid of the masses because it's so disruptive that America has basically been shut down, and it has to be a mandate, and it has to really prove to even MAGA that Donald Trump can't be their leader because 70-80% of America just thinks that he has to go. Like his approval rating needs to be in the 20s. These marches need to be overwhelming. They need to be cross-cultural. It just has to be everybody out there, and they have to be angry and aggressive with the mindset is we're out here to get Trump out of office. We're not out here to be seen and to be heard. I don't want to hear that wimpy bullshit. I don't care if anyone sees or hears my commentary. I want change. Like this is about forcing change. We're in, more revolution mode. We're not in like we need to have a broader discussion with MAGA.
That's why George Stephanopoulos this morning, my mom was watching. I walked through the kitchen, and he had on Lutnick again. I was like, stop normalizing these people. Stop bringing him on like he's a normal guest. This guy, is the one who is belittling poor people, saying, my mother-in-law misses a Social Security check. She's fine. She's not called in the office. Dude, you're a billionaire. You can send a plane for her and she can come stay with you until the checks start coming again. Shut up. I'm so tired of, MAGA just thumbing their nose. Trump was caught, on a microphone, I think it was Friday, Thursday or Friday, bragging about, it must have been Thursday because he couldn't have been in the office on a Friday. He had to be on his way to Florida by then. But he was caught in the office on a hot mic bragging about how much money he had made the oligarchs.
Charles. Yeah, yeah. And how well he did in a cognitive test and what great shape he's in as we're supposed to believe. Look, we see the guy. We
Right.
know he looks like shit. So to me, I don't even know how I don't know how anyone's watching any of the mainstream media anymore because really they're both siding things. The Trump people come on and literally their entire job, one after the other, is to come on and say the emperor has beautiful clothes.
Right.
The beautiful emperor beautifully dressed. When we all know the emperor has no clothes, he's a lunatic, he's a psychopath, he's a malignant narcissist, and he's a moron. Like we know that. We see that in his actions every day, but their job is to come on and like in essence like prop up Trump.
Right.
Tease Trump with their comments because they know he's watching. And it's really just an embarrassment and serves no purpose. And I don't even understand as journalists how they can sit in a meeting before, okay, here's the show today. I got Lutnick, I got Scott Bessent, I got Peter Navarro, I got the Nazi Jewish guy.
Miller. Yep.
Christy Levitt, like any of them. I got Rubio up and down the list and Pam Bondi and feel like you're getting anything but a total propaganda show. It's a waste of fucking time. We all need to turn it off and put all our attention into the forces for change. Not
Yep.
the forces that are trying to pretend like this is, normal times with just some, new ideas being brought to the table.
Right.
Like that's bullshit. That's not what we're in, right? We're in a crisis. And we need to function as if it's a crisis, and the crisis is not just economics and fighting oligarchs, because that's only part of it. The Project 2025, the guys who wrote Project 2025, not oligarchs.
Nope.
They're regular guys. They're just regular Christo white supremacist guys.
Right.
Well, they're not billionaires.
Nope.
So it's not just fighting the oligarchs. You're fighting a lot more than the oligarchs, right? The Proud Boys aren't oligarchs.
No. At all. At all. So, yeah, man. But that's where we are. So when we talk about action, leadership, messaging, we still got some work to do at all three phases.
I mean, the leaders have been pretty clear so far. Booker has jumped in, and it still needs to be more. But the message I think we've come to the conclusion is that we got half the message.
Right.
We got half the message. We probably have 10% of the leaders we need, half the message, and maybe a quarter to a third of the action because we're getting people out there, but mostly white people still. And mostly just following the one message. So there's a lot of fill-in that needs to be done.
Yeah. We need to send this to Jack. So since you have a senator and a congressman working together, maybe we get another senator and congressman working together in terms of Corey and Jasmine Crockett. Working the black side of things, working the brown side of things.
Maybe Warren can get with Jasmine, and maybe Corey can get with. He's got a lot of choices. Maybe
I know.
Maybe Chris Hayes. Maybe the guy from Connecticut can get. I think he already got with Maxwell Frost. Maybe those two are a good pairing.
Omar.
The old, young, white, black, white, Latino, man, woman. Like let's get a little diverse teams together and get them out there. They might not get the 35,000 Bernie and AOC are getting, but I think they consistently get big numbers.
Remember, we didn't think Kamala. We didn't know what Kamala was going to get. Look at the numbers she got. Right? Like this requires radical thought and radical action. What we're dealing with now requires some dramatic and radical thought and action. We got to think outside the box. Yep. Yes. Right. Right. And let's watch the message take hold because the message will take hold when they get out there. and they start talking to people around America, especially black folks, and black folks will tell you exactly what they want to hear. Right? I may be off with my, just asking for a little bit to begin with, but at least we got a dialogue, right? I'm of the opinion that an open dialogue is the pathway to change, and you gotta start somewhere, right? And right now, the bigger goal is getting relief for all of America by getting rid of Trump, right? So let's start there, right? But don't forget us in the fight, because we'll come along. We love a good fight. We've been doing it for a while. And then let's talk about making America a more fair country with everybody who wants a slice of the American pie being able to get one. And then we have progress. And then we can start to rebuild and be stronger than we've ever been. Oh, because by the way, Brock, the world is moving on without us. Right? This USA first shit, this isolationism shit, this is not going to work well for us when it comes to our economy. Because the European Union benefiting, Canada benefiting, right? All these other countries are benefiting. China benefiting. They're working out trade partnerships with other countries, right? And they're saying, oh, the U.S. doesn't want to come along, screw them. We'll watch the dollar shrink.
Exactly, and they're selling the dollar along the way, and they're buying less U.S. bonds along the way, and we're losing a portion of our wealth and our power. And they're, little by little, they're figuring it out by banding together. So we've really made them stronger. We've helped them coalesce and unify, while we think we can just run around solo. Yeah, it's fucking not working, and we need change before we find ourselves like at the bottom of the rankings, right? We've slipped off of the top. Now we're moving ourselves to the middle range, but like pretty soon we're not preordained to be on the top.
No.
We got to earn it.
No. And there's nobody that I have confidence in that White House that can keep us from a depression. Nobody. There's no one there. No one there with balls enough to say, Trump, you're killing us. You're killing us.
They answer to Trump and he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. Right. And now finally some companies admitted it. But still not enough. Not enough.
Even the Wall Street Journal finally woke up, and calling for his impeachment. So that's where we need to be headed. All right, my friend.
All right.
I'm sure we're wearing people's eardrums out, but that was a good discussion. I loved every minute of it. Let's get back together and do it again tomorrow. What do you say?
Okay, Mark. Take care. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Sounds good, my friend. Peace.
Bye-bye.